made my argument.
Yes.
I was only responding that Chris Bariomuns and the government he serves, they told the General Court Martial, stop immediately, we are implementing a decision of court. Then the other orders of court, they said they are consulting, there is a process that is ongoing. In between, Museveni's son, who heads the military, he said Besigye can only leave prison in a coffin or on his knees saying sorry to my father. Leave alone the statement he has made today in Chotera. He had already said that Besigye can only leave prison in a coffin, and that's what we had known.
They were
because yes, they had said Besigye should be tried by that kangaroo court, sentenced to death, and then the son and the father will determine, and the son was generous. He said, actually, we have even arranged to kill him on Tarehe Sita. We have even identified the tree. So, yes.
Was it Tarehe Sita or Heroes Day?
Heroes Day.
Yes.
Yes, we have arranged how we are going to kill Besigye.
And then the date was moved back to May.
Then, yeah, he said they had annoyed him, now he has reduced. And I sympathize with Chris that you come here to speak for people like those.
Like that.
Yeah, really, a person like you. They need to get a madman to be the one to come to speak. That you have a CDF who can say we are going to kill Besigye or even identify the tree, he even gave a date. And you come here and say we are going to implement it.
That is of the same federal
government position.
We are going to implement.
No.
So
what he utters is not the government position.
So the point the Honorable Miriam Matembe made, I am very happy that Muhoozi Kainerugaba and his father have now presented another challenge to Parliament. The son said, I cannot come. When he was summoned by the Committee on Defense, he said, you clowns, you idiots, if I ever come, you must come crawling on your knees and I will arrest you. Then now, in Chotera, he's telling his father, maybe we need these clowns and idiots to amend the law. And I am waiting to see how these idiots and the clowns are going to. I am very happy and I thank God. Having dismissed an institution of the state as clowns and idiots. Now he says, you idiots, me and my father, we are bringing an amendment for you to consider. Yes. God is very generous.
But he says the High Command is going to sit and make decisions.
No, the decision is how to amend. But eventually the amendment must be done by the clowns and the idiots. And the idiots have been summoned to enter tomorrow.
You see, this is it.
So tomorrow they will come all running to come and crawling on their knees.
And
because the
like
father,
he said,
yes, the father and the son have said the idiots go and amend.
And bow before
I want
us.
to thank God. I didn't know that I will live to see this very quickly. Maybe I thought it will happen much later. Having dismissed Parliament as a crown, he actually said on February 10th, he's raiding Parliament and not just protesting but to take over. Now they need them. So idiots, you have an opportunity. Those who said you are, yes, to prove that actually you are not.
Fellow idiots.
So, but for me, the bigger point in all this is that you have Mr. Museveni and his son and his family who think Uganda is maybe an estate that they bequeathed from their parents. That everybody else in this country, you continue living in Uganda at their mercy. They are helping you to live in this country. And they have been abusing not only civilians, because you see, Museveni promote his son, and the peeping ceremony can only be attended by his uncle Salim Sare, who came dressed in civilians as if he was going to milk cows to preside over a military function. The son gets appointed as CDF, and the function for him to take that office can only be presided by an uncle who is busy in Guru. So they drive the son to Guru for him to take office. The office is in Kampala. But he went to take
but he serves the nation. Guru is part.
By a veteran, because Sare retired from the army. But he must be the one to preside over. So all these things, they are holding everybody in contempt. They are doing us a favor to be around. That's why the son says they will continue. The transformation is because of the militaries, because of his father. The wife who is the Minister of Education is seated there. And now they send helpless Chris Variombos on TV to come and defend them. They are abusing everybody, including yourself. That you can have this situation obtaining in your country and you have courage even to go on TV and defend it. Where a son and a mother and you remember how she was crying when you were in Chankwan's, that they had spoken about nepotism. He said, my husband and my in-law and son, they are sacrificing.
How does she come into the debate on the Supreme Court?
I am talking about family rule. Family rule, they sat their wife and husband, and their son was addressing them. The only thing he didn't say was daddy. Now daddy had become his excellency. In another setup, maybe he will be addressing a daddy. So they are abusing everybody, including people they send on TV to speak for them. And this abuse is not limited to Dr. Vesige, is not limited to people before. So they think, because they are ruling us at gunpoint, you have no option. We will do this. You can go and hang. That's why Museveni said this country is not ruled by judges. Who are they even to issue this sort of a decision? It is ruled by, and when we will go and reverse it. That was the effect of Museveni's letter, that we will go and reverse it. So the son was reminding him in Chotera, Daddy, you remember you said you reverse this decision? You need now to begin that reversal. And eventually the country should prepare for that. The one thing they didn't do, immediately they stopped the military court from proceeding with the trial. They should, and that's what MPs told them, that you've done these wrong things. Like one time, former Prime Minister Chintu Musoke told them, you see, when they were removing honorable members from being a Secretary General of NRM, Mamba said that what you're doing is illegal. Chintu Musoke in the same meeting, he said, but Mr. President, you have been doing these illegal things and we keep moving. Even in Babas, why don't you illegally remove him? So the MPs told it, you continue doing what you have.
In a democratic dispensation like ours, the executive proposes, Parliament disposes, and the judiciary is there to provide checks and balances. And in this particular case, government proposed through legislation that the civilians, especially those who are found in possession of materials which ordinarily should be in the hands of the armed forces, should be tried in military courts. And Parliament approved it. So what was being tested now in the court was whether what Parliament passed meets the test of constitutionality. And the court says no, the law, the UPDF Act, as passed by Parliament, especially with regard to the operations of the court-martial, do not meet the standards of the Constitution. And to me that is good, that the different arms of the state are able to check each other, that the judiciary can check what Parliament is doing. Now, the court, the Supreme Court said the cases of civilians being tried in the General Court Martial should cease, and then they should be transferred to the civilian courts. The Supreme Court didn't say those who are being tried in the court martial are innocent, they have no case to answer. No, it didn't say that. It also didn't say release them, we have ordered for their release. No, it only said seize the proceedings, the court martial, then transfer. So what does transfer mean? I saw some arguments in the Parliament, some of which appeared pedestrian to me. They were saying the Commissioner General of Prisons should open the prison, people to move out. No, it doesn't work like that. What the court has issued is a judgment. What now you need are orders, which orders should be served to the relevant departments for that transfer to take place. So what is expected is that the lawyers of, in this case, I think Michael Kabazuguruka, should go to court and secure the orders from court until those orders which are served. For instance, Commissioner Byabasheja of Prisons cannot just open Ruzira and say, Dr. Vesige, go out.
Walk out.
He will need to be served with an order from court. You can't carry judgment and take it to the prisons, or take it to DPP, or take it to court martial. So there's that process. And what the Attorney General was saying, that process is on, extracting the relevant orders, serving them to the relevant departments for that transfer to take place. And of course, when a step is taken, we don't have to call a press conference to say today this has been done. Maybe when the Attorney General has written to an office, maybe to court martial to do this, we don't have to call a press conference and say today the Attorney General has written or he has spoken to DPP.
We're feeding on.
So that process is on. So the anxiety in the public, I think mainly the people just want to see, like those who are in the prisons, getting out. But they are not getting out to go home. In my understanding, they will get out to be taken to the civilian courts and maybe charged afresh and maybe charges preferred, or where the state maybe thinks the charges are frivolous, they may be dropped. So that process is on. And it cannot be in one day. I don't think we expected that when the Supreme Court has made the judgment, then automatically the transfers would occur the following day. So what am I saying? As government, I had spoken earlier on actually on this very television that we respect the decision of court and the government shall comply with what the court has ruled.
The Chief of Defense Forces describes this judgment as quite unacceptable.
Well, of course, people are entitled to have their opinions. Like even the president wrote, said, I'm sorry, this is a wrong decision, and you can't stop people from having opinions. And it is being debated in the parliament, even in this talk show, in your people's homes. But I am speaking for government, that the government respects the decision of the Supreme Court and it shall be complied with. And indeed, the steps have already started to comply with the decision, which is largely to transfer the cases to the civilian courts. But also there are other recommendations, like legislation, to look at the UPDF Act and make the necessary amendments to make it comply with the Constitution. If need be, to amend the Constitution, all those will take place. So whether the CDF has said is not happy with the decision, those are his statements. But the government shall comply with the decision of the court.
Dr. Matembe, from what the minister is telling us and what you heard from one, the president wrote his views, the CDF has spoken today and had communicated before.
Today again.
Yes, again. Where does this leave, that decision and that quest for justice?
Thank you very much. I have listened to this distinguished lawyer and advocate, and everybody heard what he said, which is completely right. I have listened to the government.
Yes.
To the government, as if he, I wish he could know. This one just comes to speak. But the people who have the power, the people who have the power, me, I represent the public and they know I'm speaking for them. For you, you say you speak for government, wapi, and you see, anyway, you spoke. What you spoke was okay, that the government, the government is going to act. But in the meantime, the government, the real government, the head, plus his son, who think they are the rulers of this nation and the nation belongs to them, have aired their view. When the son was speaking today, the father was there. He was reporting to the father. And when Varyomo says that you can't stop anybody from commenting, not everybody is anybody. For me, that's what shocked me. You remember one time when you when you told the audience that I go to State House to get money in the night. What inspired me or provoked me to speak the way I spoke? I was shocked to see. I couldn't in my life imagine that a minister of government could tell lies openly to the public. When you are somebody, you are somebody. You are in a position, when you are in a certain position.
You want us to revisit that conversation?
What you speak, no, I've left that. I was giving example. What you speak really is very crucial. Now, for me,
that's
it
why
is
people
not,
should take
I
it
want
seriously.
I want now to congratulate the judiciary that at last, when we've been talking, they braced themselves and said, let what happens happen, but let us decide correctly. And it was a real correct decision. But what response did it get from the president and his son? You know, they own this nation. From the president, I saw the president dividing the court, the judges of the court. He said that the decision was wrong, and said that some of the judges are acting for foreigners, foreign interests. Can you imagine, in Uganda, whoever speaks the truth, whoever does what is correct, is acting for foreign interests. And I wonder, is it that everybody who is in government who says, yes, support the government, cannot see what is right? Because the moment you say what is right or do what is right, you are said to be acting for foreign interests. And he divided and said, these other judges, those the NRIM, those which are clearly, who are clearly NRIM, he said those ones are the ones working for Uganda. They are the ones interested. I heard what he said, that statement. He divided the judges. He said some of those are acting for foreigners. And then other ones, he named them even and said those are the good ones. You see, I'm saying this.
I'm trying to pick up the statement.
I'm
of the
saying
president.
this, tell you what everything means now. Now his son said it was, for them they just can't accept that. And today he repeated and said that we were shocked. They were shocked that the Supreme Court could do the right action because they've been thinking they are under them, they control them. They didn't know that the judiciary is supposed to be an independent organ of the state. Just like the executive is independent, the legislature is independent, but they collaborate and work in relation to other, respecting each other's position as the organ of the state. Because for the young man, he thinks him and his father are the rulers of the nation. Nobody should ever say or do what they don't agree with. And what shocked me today when he talked was that, look, some of the things he said, that this is not acceptable, And he went on to say that the UPDF is the foundation of democracy and economic transformation of this country. And he said they cannot compromise on the vision of the UPDF. You know, when he says all this, to me the conclusion is this government, this country is ruled by military. There is a military leadership in this country, but covered under the so-called democratic governance. Since when did the army in a country, you know, the CDF is an officer within the executive in the area of the army. And you know, the army in Uganda is not supposed to be fighting Ugandans. It is supposed to defend the territorial integrity of our country. But because they came from the bush and they took over the country thinking it was ruled badly, up to now the Sabarwan, that's why when there is a problem, he goes, he puts on his uniform, he comes, he's the Sabarwan, he tells people he will do fire, and then he puts his son to be. So for them, they think that they own this country and they are the leaders of this country. And therefore, when you are asking, why all this? Why not take action? How can they take action? Because for them, as far as I have said it many, many times in this country, President Museveni is the authority He took over all the organs of the state. And by the way, if you don't know, I hear, I don't know if it is true, but let me also say I hear, if it happens, you know me, I found out I'm a prophet these days. I hear now, the caucus, NRM caucus, is about to meet.
They're meeting tomorrow.
Is it true?
Yes.
So they are meeting tomorrow. What do you think they are meeting about? They are going now to negotiate how much money they will give those members of parliament. Transactional.
But the caucus meets regularly.
The minister, who is this? The CDF is saying, what did he say? That they will bring the laws because they know transactional. Transactional. They are going to parliament to meet as a caucus to decide on how they are going to work on this, make the constitutional change, review the constitution, and they will pay them. And I'm sorry, Bambe, if you members of parliament, you qualify to be what the CDF said. When you called him to appear before the parliament, he said, he told them, you are just clowns and idiots. Now I'm waiting to see whether when they go and they transact to them and they pass these laws which are so bad, see whether the man would not be right to call them over fools or idiots or whatever. So for me, the whole issue is we wouldn't be discussing all this, because once you respect the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court of this country, once it gives its judgment, for instance, the president should not comment the way he commented, because he's not the judge. He doesn't belong to that institution.
But he can express an opinion, can't he? About
As a president, honestly, let me tell you, and this lawyer will help me, once the Supreme Court has declared a judgment, when it is High Court, there is an appeal. When it is the Court of Appeal, you appeal. But when the Supreme Court has decided, you take action in respect of the institution as this institution that is the final. Because as Baryomus was correctly saying, when there is a, like call it a conflict, the role of the judiciary is to settle the work of the other institutions. The executive, the parliament passes all the executive should do. The executive starts implementing. If the executive implementing contrary to whatever, then you go to court. And then the court is the one we balance. In the end, it balances everything. If you are not satisfied with it, then you come out and then you decide how to correct what the judgment was saying. But you as the head of state and your son as the commander of the armed forces coming out to that show clearly that you don't joke with us. For us, we are fighters. We must get what we came to do here as the army. No way. That shows that there is a clear military leadership in this country. And that's why, for me, I don't like the whole nonsense of now preparing for elections to waste our money when you know that we are actually militarily led.
Thank you. Linus Ngompek is Vice Chairperson of Defense and Internal Affairs Committee of Parliament. And he says, the UPDF Amendment Bill is before the Defense and Internal Affairs Committee of Parliament for processing. The decision by General MK, the CDF, to take the matter to the UPDF Army Command is a welcome gesture that every right-thinking Ugandan must salute. The Supreme Court, in its ruling last week, referred to some of the controversial matters and advised Parliament to amend the UPDF Act. Frontliners and viewers, the military court-martial means well to the security and economic stability of Uganda. Honorable Semujunganda, you had a debate. Hare Sagara, I saw your message. You say you're rephrasing it. I'll wait to receive it. Honorable Semujunganda, you brought the matter up in Parliament. You're debating it yesterday. And you're saying suspend Parliament until government takes action. What are you looking for?
No, the proposal was a response to what the Deputy Speaker said. Deputy Speaker said we can only talk, and I reminded him we had an MP who was arrested beyond what the Constitution provides as a deadline. And the presiding officer, then the Honorable Kadaga, said we will not sit until that MP is freed, and they did free him. So I was only reminding the Deputy Speaker that we are not as helpless as he was presenting us. But before, if you can allow me, I need to make a response to what Dr. Ayuugumiza said. When the Attorney General made a presentation, very good presentation, we asked him the same questions we have asked the Honorable Norbert Mao today. First question, he said he had written to the court martial and told them to stop any trial, and they stopped. So we then asked him, because in the other cases he now started going around, he said we are liaising with the court, and we asked him, for the case of court martial, you have told them to stop immediately. The rest of the judgment, you are now going to the heirs, you are now asking for a decree, and that relates to the issue of the Commissioner General of Prison and the prisons. Ayuugumiza said the Commissioner General cannot open Luzira for people to get out. The issue which we are, the issue which we are, so did the court, so we extracted the order to the court, to the General Court Martial to stop working. Do they have an order extracted for them?
You submit.
No, I'm asking you.
You want me to respond?
Yes, you can answer.
Yes.
Yeah, because you said for Commissioner General to release
Let
people, he needs an
the
order.
lawyers here countermand what I'm saying. That when the court has made a ruling or a judgment, the administrative steps you take to extract those orders to serve different departments. And the interested parties should go and get those orders. For instance, if you wanted Dr. Besigye to get out, you must get an order and take it to the prisoners.
His lawyers
you
have,
don't expect.
applied for a writ of habeas
I have
corpus.
asked a simple
No,
question.
so, and I'm answering you. So you don't expect, because I saw some of
and
you
who
saying,
served the General Court Martial to stop the trials? Because basically you are supposed to be
Why
appearing.
didn't they go on Monday? Why didn't they take him to their court martial on Monday? Because the processes had not started.
because
you are
government is
saying,
complying with the orders of court.
and
That
they comply
the
halfway.
proceedings
So
should
that-
cease.
So that's how
That
you
the
have
proceedings should cease, and they
that's
have
how you have
ceased.
contracted.
And now they are
this
working
man.
on transfers. Yes.
You see, Chris, you can
No.
attempt to be wise, but this matter is very difficult. For court martial, you said stop immediately.
Yes.
We asked all the ministers who have appeared
Look,
before
you the
Parliament,
wise, you tell us.
who have appeared
It's a
before
week now,
Parliament.
by the way. A whole week.
Dr. Besigye, in particular, and Ajobed Kamuregea, they were remanded. There was a remand warrant up to Monday. It expired. We asked them to tell us under what legal regime is Besigye still in prison. Because if the issue, as the lawyer has rightly said, was transfer, that transfer should have happened immediately.
Completely.
The moment it didn't happen, then you must explain. Because you see, I have said it and I want to repeat myself. I was helping Brigadier Sewaga to do his book, and he told me how they were driven to Luzira after the fall of Idi Amin. There was no warrant. And then Luzira had refused to admit them. One military man walks there and he said, admit them, the warrant will come next week. I didn't know, and that's what I told the Honorable Attorney General Chimwanu Kachiriowa. I did not know that those things can happen under Museveni. That you have people in prison under no remand. Nobody has remanded the
No,
Besigye.
let the PO,
So
a
the-
lawyer, tell the public.
But he has said
No,
it
just hold
already.
on. In these circumstances, how do you move Besigye out? Are you saying that the commissioner of prisons should just open and go, or he has to be moved with instruments?
Well, I said that before, and I said
Otherwise, the Semuju is just confused.
no. The point that Semuju is
You
making,
said the right thing.
No.
the point that Semuju is making is that in one instance you say you require an order, in another instance you already complied with the order of the Supreme Court. That is a contradiction he's pointing out. But to the extent that parties that seek to benefit from an order must extract that order and serve it, you're right. Okay, you're right. And that's why I think that Dr. Kizza Besigye and his lawyers have gone to court to seek orders from the court for his release.
And
But
the
that
court
contradiction in
and the court
argument,
martial stopped because directly the Supreme Court says the proceedings must cease. even without the Attorney General writing, they should have seized automatically because it was very explicit.
But there are also other explicit orders of the Supreme Court which you haven't complied with.
Which
because
ones?
the excuse you're saying
Which
is that
ones?
nobody has extracted an order to serve it upon the state.
Which
That
ones?
is the
Which ones?
contradiction
You say them, which ones?
that Semoju is pointing out.
Which ones?
The court has said transfer files. Have you transferred any files? Instead, you're saying we have commenced the process.
Yes, the
we're
process.
talking.
Moreover,
we're-
amending
That's the
So are you saying if
contradiction.
a file now has moved from court to martial to the civil court, I must
Nicholas-
hold the press conference till it
Nicholas,
has moved? I have
this
said
is
the
a
process
fairly
is on.
technical matter.
Yes.
In the Supreme
But I
Court,
hope you will give me enough time
Yes.
because these are
But I would also come
anti-government
with
voices
this
against
law.
one person.
In-
So
in-
I should be given
We are
sufficient time to...
anti-government, or we
Yes.
are anti-wrongdoing.
let me ask
Anti-government.
let me ask
Anti-wrongdoing.
Nicholas.
Allow me to-
Just a minute. Let me throw this. Let me
Yes.
throw this to Nicholas, especially as a lawyer on the panel. The two parties are before the Supreme Court. The Attorney General was the appellant in this matter
You lost.
of Kabazi Guruka. When the Supreme Court is giving orders in its judgment, it's giving them to both to both parties
Yeah.
that are present before it.
Yeah.
So my presumption would be that every party picks what the court has said and begins acting on its part. Would that be correct?
No,
Does the
process-
burden still remain on the successful party to process the rest? Does it?
So if you want a decision of the court to be implemented, the person seeking for that decision to be implemented must extract from the judgment of the court. The court's judgment is over 300 pages.
Absolutely.
It must extract the orders of the court in what is called a court order and then serve it to the entity they want that order to be implemented by. But in the process of extracting an order, it is not just one party. For purposes of ensuring that a court order is accurate, a court order is extracted and signed on by both parties in this case. It would therefore mean that the Attorney General, if he was well-meaning, would commence the process as a public servant, as a guardian of the Constitution and public interest, could begin the process of extracting an order, give a draft order that he has extracted to the other party to confirm if those were orders of the court. They will then both sign on the order. The court will then seal it and confirm that these are the orders we made. Those orders then become the document that is directive that you can serve upon an entity to implement the orders of the court.
The lawyers for Dr. Kizza Besigye and Obed Kamlegia have decided to apply for a writ of habeas corpus.
They are right.
Yeah, they have, and many other lawyers have seen, the Law Society has filed a case as well in respect of Advocate Aaron Kizza. Their interpretation is that there is some effect of the court judgment, especially for Dr. Kizza Besigye, and the point that Semoju has made is actually accurate, that the prison is holding Dr. Kizza Besigye on no warrant. For someone to go from court to prison, you must have what is called a detention warrant. That detention warrant is extended on the day you come back for mention of your case. In Dr. Kizza Besigye's case, they never came back to court. The warrant upon which they were remanded had lapsed, had expired. The argument now before the High Court is that they are being detained illegally. There's no warrant. So it's a technical argument.
But can Biaba Shija just open the gate of Luzira and say,
Oh,
"Dr. Besigye,
no,
come"?
absolutely not. He cannot do that. He has to be moved by an order of court.
That's why they are
Honorable
going to
Semoju, you hadn't concluded your thought. Let me come back to you.
Actually, I hadn't.
Can be tried by the national courts unless the crime is against the military. Another viewer here says, Kwanka Semoju. I have a message here from, let me see. Yes. John Ken Luchamuzi, the man, President Conservative Party. The Attorney General's submission before Parliament on Tuesday that he advised the DPP over the implication of the Supreme Court ruling is evidence that he prejudiced the office of the DPP in open defiance of Article 120, Sub-Article 6 of the Constitution, and that carries a price capable of forcing him out of office. John Ken Luchamuzi. So he wants to expand the argument and says the Attorney General should be pushed out of office for what he has done or failed to do. Fred is watching us and says, I'm praying for this that Muze continues to lead this country till May 2036, because what is likely to befall Uganda after him, you people may not like it.
That is
Such
a hopeless
TV
guy.
and radio talk shows may stop the day he will leave power.
Who is that?
Someone
Who is he? I didn't hear his
is
name.
called Bahati Fred.
He's a fool.
Julius,
Because you see, somebody who thinks that that President Museveni is eternal and can never leave this country.
His argument is that should Museveni be replaced by his son, that is what will happen. That's how I have understood it. But of course, both of them have got to go. This is not their estate.
Julius Ankunda is watching us and says, as we celebrate Liberation Day, I pray for introspection from all of us, especially as leaders, to reflect on what that means for our country and speak and act accordingly. May God bless and protect Uganda. I will not take too many messages. There are so many. But I want to get Dr. William Mubirui Nadingo says, immediately after the Supreme Court ruling was delivered last Friday, 31st January 2025, I saw our so-called prominent lawyers telling the already excited Ugandans that Kizza Besigye was to be released on that very day or very soon. After hearing all what has been said by our lawyer politicians, I went to my Facebook page and said that according to the Supreme Court ruling, no one was to be released very soon, as some lawyers were telling people to the extent of even saying the General Court Martial had been disbanded.
It was.
I went on and said that it was only its proceedings, trials that were halted. It will resume its duties once the recommended amendments have been implemented. I have only discovered one thing. The people who claim to be knowing laws, they actually don't understand them. To cut the short story, the long story, to cut the short story, no, to cut the story short, the Supreme Court did not in its judgment set anyone free. All the drama we are seeing today has been caused by a group of some lawyers who either misunderstood the ruling or they are playing politics. William Mobiru in Nabingo. Dr. Bariomus, I want to give you some time to respond. There are many things that were pushed your way. Enoch Wakabe, I'll come to you in a moment. Yes, Doctor.
First, the military in Uganda is subordinate to civilian rule. That's why soldiers salute Honorable Semuju as an elected member of parliament. And that remains. It is not true that the military has taken over, or that what we are saying here, when we leave this studio, the military will be waiting for us outside. No. And I salute them on their Tarehe Sita celebrations today. I think it's unfair, the comments being made in response to the President's response. The President's response to this judgment was balanced. Yes, he said, because as a revolutionary, as an NRM revolutionary, he believes that civilians who are found in the possession of the firearms or military hardware should be tried. That's what he believes. And he thought the law had been coached in terms that align with the Constitution. So he was like disappointed. Oh, Parliament didn't make the law like that. And he says in his response that 3 of the judges actually said the military courts can actually try civilians under particular circumstances. That's why he was applauding them, that they see his wisdom. Because if you read the judgments of the various judges, there are those who said, under particular circumstances, I think quoting the UN framework, that you can define circumstances when civilians can be tried. So some of the judges said it is possible. However, the way the UPDF Act was drafted, it does not comply with the expectations of the Constitution. So he did not overturn the ruling. And actually he said, I have now already given instruction to the Attorney General to study the judgment and extract those areas, especially where the law has to be amended. And indeed, the judgment says some legislative reforms have to be undertaken in order for the UPDF Act to comply with the Constitution. And to me, what we pick from this is that there are those who have been perennially saying that the judges in Uganda are cadre judges, are twisted by the president, by the executive. There were all sorts of insults to the Chief Justice before this ruling came out, and they have been proved wrong, that our judiciary can make objective assessments and make independent decisions that are not necessarily in line with what the president or the executive wants. And that's how democracy functions. Well, Dr. Matembe says she's a prophet, but I think she's a false prophet, thinking that the caucus is going, of NRM is going to sit. That's all done.
Wait, what will happen?
You are saying you have prophesied about the caucus sitting,
A number of
but
things.
I'm saying that the NRM caucus sits regularly, with or without rulings of court. The caucus has been sitting to deliberate on many issues. And I can even tell you, the Supreme Court ruling is not part of the agenda of the sitting tomorrow, which we are going to have as a caucus. So therefore, if you are a prophet in that regard, you are a false prophet. Now,
You are
I have-
provoking me to answer you.
the
You will give me
comments
time
by
to answer
General-
him.
the CDF, General Mohozi, of course, of late he has been tweeting and making all sorts of comments, and I have on several occasions said those tweets and comments he makes do not necessarily represent the position of government. For instance, when he tweets that Dr. Kizza Besigye will be hanged on Heroes Day, and then he says, now I have brought the date earlier by 1 month, to May 9th. That's not the position of government.
And then he says he
I
will
think that's
come
more
out
of
in a
he
coffin.
makes them that he will leave Ruzira in a coffin. So would you want to say that the government has decided that Besigye will be killed in Ruzira? No.
Do you see
Those are just
take a decision that he should be kidnapped from Kenya?
Dr.
Just hold
Bari
on.
wants
Was
to-
that a
let-
decision
let
of
me-
government?
those are just Cavalier comments made by General Mohozi in his unguarded moments, and they should be not be taken as a position of government.
Dr. Bari,
Now, last
you are the Minister for ICT. There is a law called the Computer Misuse Act,
Yes,
under which some people have been charged. But number two, you're also the Minister for National Guidance.
yes.
What guidance have you provided?
I have several spoken over this issue, and some of the guidance I give, I don't give it through television. But for you to be charged under that law, somebody must petition court. If you are aggrieved by what he writes, you can move to court and raise a case under the Computer Misuse Act. It just doesn't fall from heaven that you charge somebody. Somebody must move. Now, but I have always guided, and so those comments do not represent the view and position of government. For instance, it is not true that Dr. Kizza Besigye will be hanged. It's not true that Dr. Kizza Besigye will be killed in Ruzira. It is not true, for instance, that the government had decided to deport the American ambassador. All those tweets, I think he just makes them casually.
Do you rebuke those comments?
Absolutely, absolutely, we
Say
don't.
to the camera.
So lastly, I think the challenge we have, people like politicking. The lawyers, including Nicholas here, knows what needs to be done after Supreme Court gave a judgment. But many people have chosen, including lawyers, to play to the gallery, to just politic. The other day, Semuju was saying that we had given little time to debate in the parliament. He was moving a motion that we spend the whole day debating it. And of course, you're debating it and you do what? When the Attorney General has assured us that the government has started the process to implement the orders of court. And I think what should be done is that lawyers for both parties should continue expressing interest. The lawyers for the litigant should sit with the Attorney General's lawyers and work out that process of extracting the orders from court, because both the government side is interested as well as the other lawyers of Kabazuguruka. So they should sit together as lawyers and agree on which orders they should apply for from court, extract them, and then serve the relevant
Thank you.
offices.
We'll
Like I
continue
have
this-
said, the court martial stopped the proceedings because it was explicitly expressed by the Supreme Court. But the others, I want to insist, the other actions, you will have to move those institutions through court orders.
Thank
not
you.
merely by which.
Court said transfer.
No, yes.
Honorable
That's
Semuju,
also
and a quick comment
Nyashara,
from you.
When we are processing the Administration of Judicial Act, one of the contentious issues was about retirement packages.
Mm.
In the understanding and the argument the government made was that these judges, having presided over some of the cases resulting in 2 sentences, death and so on and so forth, we needed to retire them with a very good package.
Mm.
I remember it was my proposal because Parliament was about to drop a Chief Justice retiring with a whole salary. And I defended it and succeeded. I want to understand, the lawyers can help me, how we are going to give retirement packages to people who are acting in 1 year. Because the judges, if I recall, of the Court of Appeal and I think High Court, they were supposed to be retiring with 75% of their salary and other benefits. And some lawyers made the argument, and it was persuasive, that many of these judges leave. I think at that time they were using a former principal judge, Nambooze, that when he left the bench, because they sit every day to listen to cases up to the evening, in the process, many of them get disabled.
Mm.
And I think the lawyers were raising money to take him for treatment. Say, this is an embarrassment. Someone who has served the country and you can't look after them in retirement.
And they live a very restricted life.
Yes.
They can't do many things that other people
interaction
do.
is
The interaction is limited.
So the judges, especially Nicholas, tell me
The
how we are
lawyers.
going to deal
The lawyers
with the retirement packages
of acting
of 1 year acting judge or 2 year acting. But in the general context of how Museveni behaves, I was at the university, and when he was quarreling about judges, he had wanted the requirement of practice lowered, because at that time, and I think he still is, 10 years for High Court. I don't know, that's 15 for the rest of the...
15 for the Court of Appeal, 25 for
Yeah.
the Supreme Court.
Because at that time, his target was the old judges that he found in courts. And he said, no. These ones, the age must be 3 years. Because he wanted to appoint his own judges. And I want to thank the judges who have stood their ground, appointed by Museveni in Museveni's era. And that's why his son says he's shocked by because he thinks all these are workers, how can they rule against us? Because all the judges in the Supreme Court today are judges appointed under Museveni. And sometimes, like he does, he is the one who advises the Judicial Service Commission on who to appoint. And then the Judicial Service Commission later also advises him to appoint his own judges. When
That's not being fair to Justice Kavito, is it?
I want to give you...
The chairman of the
I want
Judicial
to
Service
give you
Commission.
examples.
What evidence do you have?
Listen, don't hurry.
No, I'm asking.
When former MP Patrick Chigundu died, at his funeral in Masaka, the wife called Jenny Nandaura, she said, I want to thank the president for giving me this job so that I continue educating Chigundu's children. That was her address. That the reason she was given a job to become a High Court judge was to go and look after Chigundu's children. And it was in the public.
Well, he's the appointing authority, isn't he?
Yeah.
Under Article 141?
Yeah.
I thought the consideration for judges is not...
qualified? Wasn't she qualified?
It does not matter, Honorable
I
William
think it's a
Atema.
process argument that the names must come from the Judicial Service Commission.
Yes.
Yeah.
And once the names go to the president,
He has no option because he doesn't pick... He shouldn't.
so you cannot bring other names that have not been vetted by the Service Commission on the list.
And when you begin thanking him that the main reason he appointed you is to go and look after children of his former friend.
No, but you know that one, sorry to interfere, but you know people in this country, everybody thanks the president. Everybody, even when they because he is the government, he is the everything. And if this woman was at the funeral and thanked, I'm so glad that I now have this position because
can now look
now
after
I
my
can take care of my children. Really, that one I wouldn't say that he really appointed him exactly at that time when
But
the
you
man
have another
died.
case of retired Justice Anup Singh,
Which one?
the Asian judge who was plucked from the UK straight to the bench in the High Court. Even when in the UK he was a disbarred lawyer, never went to the Service Commission. President Museveni went to London, was meeting Ugandans who were expelled from here. They said, we don't have people in the system. They gave him Anup Singh. Anup Singh became a judge, never went through the process of appointment. Just to make the point that Semoji is making, these things happen.
But how did Justice Anup Singh end?
He retired eventually. The challenge against his appointment
yes.
was not determined before his retirement. So he retired and has the full benefit of a retired judge.
And he was doing
We need to move. Could we allow Honorable Semoji to conclude his thought and then we move on to
You see,
the other part of the
so
discussion?
the point I was making, about a month ago, I was reading an article in Monitor when Museveni had called his advisors to advise them. So he does these things. The processes, he will undermine them once he's interested in particular people to serve in particular position. That's the point I was making, going back to what he used to say and what he used to push for, that I want the years of practice reduced, because at that time he had quarrels with the Tunom Junis in the Supreme Court and others, the Karokora. So he had wanted judges, what we call cadre judges. So those who are appointed, I think they can pick courage from the recent judgment of the Supreme Court, that even when you are brought by Museveni, you have a duty to the country, and that's why the country through Parliament gave you good salary but also a good retirement package. So that the decisions you make are not decisions to please any authority, but decisions that will have impact on the lives of the
Thank you.
Ugandans.
Moving on, a week tomorrow from that ruling of, from that decision of the Supreme Court, with seismic implications on whether civilians can be tried in the court-martial, and the court ruled that process is unconstitutional. But a week later, tomorrow, fruits of that judgment are yet to be seen, and a debate is raging across the country on what happens next. The Chief of Defense Forces today describes that decision, says it came as a shock, quite very unfortunate and quite unacceptable. Those are his words. I want to come back to you, Nicholas Opio, and ask, from your perspective as a lawyer, what does this mean? What is the lacuna in this judgment?
Well, I think first of all it's important to highlight what the court decided.
Yes.
Because there's a certain obsession about the trials of civilians. But the judgment of the Supreme Court was much more than the trials of civilians in the military court. First, the Supreme Court held that the General Court Martial is a constitutional legal entity in as far as Parliament had the powers to enact the UPDF Act and create a court, albeit with a limited jurisdiction on disciplinary offences of the UPDF. Secondly, the court found that in its current structure and form, the General Court Martial cannot pass the test of an independent, impartial tribunal, primarily because the members of that court do not have legal training, and yet they sit to decide cases, sometimes of death or long sentences, including life imprisonment. They don't have legal training. In fact, the Chief Justice put it, he equated it to a lawyer being sent to Mulago to go and do an operation, and the lawyer doesn't even know the distinction between a liver and a kidney. He might pluck out a kidney thinking it's a liver. Secondly, the Supreme Court found that the trials of servicemen before military court systems cannot pass the test of independent, fair trial, precisely because of the nature of the army, and that in trying to provide a different system for soldiers from other ordinary individuals, the UPDF Act is perpetuating a discriminatory practice because a soldier doesn't lose his rights to fair trial on account of simply joining the army. The third thing the court said was that all trials of that court should stop, regardless of what cases it is, until these fair trial standards are met. And the court ordered for a transfer of pending cases to the ordinary courts for fresh adjudication. And so that is important. The statement of the CDF is really unfortunate. I think that perhaps he's right to be shocked. I don't think he's a very high-minded, legally trained individual. He's a soldier. But if you reflect on the law, if he took legal advice, the UPDF has fantastic lawyers. Some of them were my classmates. If he took legal advice, the CDF would discover that the army is governed by the Constitution and that the power to make decisions in matters of dispute, including translation and interpretation of the Constitution, is that of the Supreme Court. And if he took advice, he would know that that is what he should follow as a CDF. But secondly, I think that the CDF and many people in the armed forces believe that power, in fact, not in practice, rests with them. And that they are therefore the ultimate arbiter of contestations in this country. And if you heard his statement, he says that they are the bedrock for Uganda's democracy, economic development. I think that is really, really a misinterpretation of the role of the armed forces in this country. If the CDF is fair-minded, he would focus on the reforms of the military justice system that the Supreme Court ordered to be undertaken.
Nicholas, I want to stay with you for a moment. You've seen a lot of the back and forth since that decision last Friday. You saw a debate in Parliament yesterday and the ruling of the Speaker to say, we can only talk, we can't do anything about this decision. The Honorable Semu Jungana and his colleagues were moving and saying, suspend Parliament until government takes action. You saw that the lawyers went to visit the Attorney General. The lawyers also went and had a meeting with the
Chief Justice.
The Chief Justice, the Commissioner General of Prisons. Why explains this back and forth? What should have happened immediately after the ruling? Everybody seems to be in a gray area now.
No, I think what the court has done is to do their part and push this discussion to the executive. The court does not implement its own decision. Once a court makes a pronouncement, the executive must implement the decision of the Supreme Court. What should have happened was for the institutions of state to quickly begin to implement the decision of the court. The Attorney General should have asked the military, because he can't ask the court-martial. The court-martial has been essentially rendered illegal. They should have asked the army to begin to do a case census quickly, so we know how many people are being tried in that court and how many people have to be tried now by the civilian courts. That seems not to have happened, and what you're doing is ping-pong administrative dragging of the feet. Secondly, I think that for many people who have, because the Supreme Court did not free people, didn't say you are now declared free, you must therefore leave. You can argue that the court should have found that once an action is illegal, it should have therefore been declared a nullity and people should have been ordered to be freed. But the court fell short of that and simply said these cases must be transferred. Now, the court didn't order that people should be released. It now falls upon the parties who are affected by this judgment to begin to look for enforcement mechanisms. I've seen the lawyers for Dr. Kizza Besigye apply to court for habeas corpus. I think that the lawyers involved in some of these cases must take out an order of mandamus against the attorney.
I have the Minister for ICT and National Guidance, Vice Chairman of the National Resistance Movement, and sits on the Central Executive Committee representing Western Uganda, the Honorable Dr. Chris Bariomo. Very nice to have you. He also represents Kinkizi East Constituency.
Thank you very much.
We have Nicholas Opio. He's an advocate and an activist. Very nice to have you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Charles. Thank you for having me. Good evening to all the viewers.
We have senior citizen, the Honorable Miria Matembe. Very nice to have you.
Thank you. Good evening, listeners. Is that what I am, senior citizen? You know what I am.
That is the package.
Child of God.
Child
Come
of God.
on, why do you forget that one?
Okay. And we have from Kira Municipality, from the People's Front for Freedom, Shadow Minister for Finance, and frontliner, the Honorable Ibrahim Semu Junganda. Very nice to have you, sir.
Thank you, and assalamu alaikum to the audience.
Thank you. The discussion tonight is anchored largely on major developments surrounding the judiciary. First, we're just receiving news. Can I ask the production, please put up those names once again, the changes in the judiciary on the bench, especially the position of Deputy Chief Justice that's now going to be filled by Justice Flavian Zeija, and the other new appointments. If you could just bring them up and we run through them. So Deputy Chief Justice, Justice of the Supreme Court, and 8 justices of the Court of Appeal who have been appointed by the President. In addition, you have another 21. So Justice Flavian Zeija is going to is becoming Deputy Chief Justice. You have Justice Muzamil Mutangula Chibedi joining the Court of Appeal. Supreme Court. And then we have the Court of Appeal there. Could you pull up the Court of Appeal? Yes. You have Her Worship Sarah Langasui, Sui, I think that's the pronunciation, Sui. Her Worship Rosemary Barebe Ngavirano, Her Worship Mary Babirie, Lillian Alum Omara, Charles Kasibayo, Her Worship Mary Kaitesi Kisache, Susan Odong, Karoli Luanga Semogerere, Joanita Gertrude Bushara. Could you pull that up a little bit more? Could you pull that up for me a little bit more? We ran through that. Yes, you have Flavia Grace Lamuno, Fatuma Nanziri Wanika, Kwemara Kafuz Jelase, Godfrey Himbaza, Andrew Kauka, Dr. Jinamia Melody Ngwatu, and Aida Nachiganda. You also have reappointment as acting judge of the High Court for 1 year, the Honorable Lady Justice Buchirwa Farida Shamila. Those appointments, there's some issues about, there's a decision on acting judges, whether that holds, and the wisdom in this, in the naming of an acting judge, the reappointment in an acting capacity. But so a quick take from the panelists here. I want to start with the active lawyer, the active advocate, Nicholas Opio. What do you make of these latest developments?
Well, the Deputy Chief Justice was due for retirement, I think somewhere around April. The appointment process was well underway before the term of the Judicial Service Commission led by the Honorable Justice Kabito, ended in January. So it is in order that the principal judge, that a Deputy Chief Justice be appointed to avoid the situation that we had when the Chief Justice, Emeritus Justice Benjamin Odoke, retired. We had a period where there was no Chief Justice. You had a Deputy Chief Justice acting as Chief Justice, at the same time holding the position of Deputy Chief Justice in Justice Kavuma. So this is an orderly transition. We congratulate Honorable the Principal Judge on his appointment. As we do the rest of the people who are appointed, I've seen some friends on the list, people who are known to me. But for me, really what is important are 2 things on this list. The injustice visited upon Lady Justice Bukirwa Farida gladly has come to an end. Remember that she was in the first lot of judges who were not confirmed after they had served what was called their acting capacity, really on account of frivolous allegations a difference of opinion on her own judgment. I'm glad that injustice has ended. The second thing is, the sad one, is the continuation of this appointments on acting capacity. The Constitutional Court has pronounced itself on that issue. Even before the Constitutional Court pronounced itself, 15 years ago, when I was still Secretary of the Law Society, two leading lawyers, Advocate Bruce Cherere and Advocate Barnabas, forget his other name is too long for my lower tongue, petitioned the Law Society, and we all had a resounding rejection of the concept of acting justices and judges of the Court of Judicature, because it offends the constitutional provision on independence of judges. A judge, the only thing a judge has is security of tenure. If you're on acting capacity, it means you're acting at the whim of somebody. And that matter eventually was taken to the Constitutional Court. The court has pronounced itself that appointment of judges and justices on acting capacities are unconstitutional. As far as I know, that judgment has been appealed, but what we continually see is the appointment of judges and justices in acting capacity.
The Attorney General applied for a stay of execution of that judgment.
He did apply for a stay of execution, but you see, you cannot stay declarations. Once the court has declared something that's unlawful, you can't stay declaration. See, a stay is to preserve status quo so that it's not destroyed. There is no status quo that was going to be destroyed if a declaration was upheld. Simply, anything else that was being done could still be rectified by the law. And I think that I contest very strongly the issuance of such stay orders for declarations on constitutional matters. And I think that anybody acting in good faith should listen to the decision of the Constitutional Court. Because in any event, it is the court that is close with the primary jurisdiction to interpret the Constitution.
Let me run through the list quickly. These appointments are made under Article 142(1) and 2 of the Constitution. The appointment of the Deputy Chief Justice, a Justice of the Supreme Court, and 8 Justices of the Court of Appeal on the advice of the Judicial Service Commission. In addition, the President has also appointed 21 judges of the High Court in acting capacity, which is what you've just been explaining there, into the judiciary service for a period of 2 years from the date of assumption of duty. So then he says, following the conclusion of disciplinary proceedings against her, the Honorable Lady Justice Buchirwa Farida Shamila has been reappointed as acting judge of the High Court for a period of 1 year. Let me run through the list. Deputy Chief Justice, the Honorable Justice Zeja Flavian, he is the current principal judge.
Yes.
Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Muzamil Mutangula Chibedi. Justices of the Court of Appeal, the Honorable Lady Justice Ketra Starisimbwa Katunguka, Honorable Lady Justice Sabiti Cornelia Kakoza, Stella Alibatese, Honorable Lady Justice Florence Nakachwa, Honorable Biaruhanga Jesse Rujema, Mosisi John Mike, the Honorable Justice Sekana Musa, the Honorable Lady Justice Nambayo Esther. Appointments as acting judges of the High Court for 2 years. Her Worship Sarah Langas Sui, Her Worship Rosemary Barebe Ngabrano, Her Worship Mary Babirie, Lillian Alum Omara, Charles Kasbayo, Her Worship Mary Kaitesi Chisache, Susan Odongo, Karoli Luanga Semogerere, Joanita Gertrude Bushara, Simon Peter Chinobe Mutegeki, Vincent Opiene, Sarah Birunji Kalibala, Isaac Teko Bone, Deepa Vama, Flavia Grace Lamuno, Fatuma Nanziri Bwanika, Kwemara Kafuzi Jelase, Godfrey Himbaza, Andrew Kauka, Dr. Jinamia Melody Ngwatu, and Ida Nachiganda. Appointment as acting judge of the High Court for 1 year, the Honorable Lady Justice Bukirwa Farida Shamila. Let me get quick comments from the other lawyer on the panel. The Honorable Dr.
Somebody
Miriam
complained
Matembe.
against her when she delivered the judgment. No, sorry.
Dr. Matembe, quick comment on these latest appointments that we've just received, and especially that one of the Deputy Chief Justice, who's the current principal judge, Justice Flavian Zaija, and the others.
Why do you bring that one singular?
No, I'm asking for your comment on the appointment. We're discussing the judiciary
For
on the show
me,
this evening.
I didn't come here to discuss this issue. It was not part of it.
Yes,
and
it's
as
breaking
you can
news.
see,
We just
it is
presented
breaking
it.
news.
Yes.
Now with breaking news, what do I say? First of all, I'm not a practicing advocate to know all these lawyers. Many of them are not are young, I think. They are not my age. So I don't know many of them. Actually, maybe the lady I know is Justice Katunguka. That one I know her very well because we are related through marriage. So I know her. Then I know Mr. Simon Peter Kinobe. That one.
Mutegeki.
He's Mutegeki.
Yes, Mutegeki.
I didn't know he was Mutegeki. My Mutegeki is the father of my daughter-in-law, but I think that one is a Munyankore. He cannot be a brother to this one. But I know Simon Peter. I know him as a Kinobe,
Yes.
as a distinguished advocate, because at one time he redeemed this grabbing, the land grabbers of my mother, who was, by the way, a mother to a bush war. My brother was called Lieutenant. He died at the level of Lieutenant Colonel or Colonel Yangombe, I have forgotten. And when he had passed on, the grabbers came to grab their land, and they declared my mother's quota for all the 60 years. But when I appealed, as an advocate, he came in, these high court judges, he crushed all those nonsensical judgments and redeemed the land of that widow. So I know him as she goes right. So I believe that one I can say I think he will be a good judge. Otherwise, the rest, what I observe, and I wouldn't have wanted to comment on this, what I observe is that there are so many women now who are being appointed judges, and I connect it with all the women these days. President Museveni appoints judges. You can see, like, for instance, all what are the IGGs? All the women, the IGG, deputy IGG, another deputy IGG, they are all distinguished ladies, and corruption is increasing completely. And you go to the city council, Kampala, is it called city council? KCCA, women come in, and you know what goes on in there. So I've been saying, but this, and the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, all those and all the iron sheets were rooted and all that kind of thing. At one time, people were calling me and saying, Matembe says that whatever a woman does, she must do twice as much as a man to be considered as half. Then they were telling me, Matembe is right. They have done twice as much in terms of looting. Look at the iron sheets. They were saying that to me, embarrassing me, because, I fight for gender equality and women's empowerment, but I was not fighting for women going into positions of power, serving power without power. That's what hurts me. So otherwise I would be excited and say we are getting many more, but they are going into decisions of power, serve power without power themselves. That is the comment I want to make, which makes me sad. Then the other point, if they want to say that I'm negative, let them say. Let them prove themselves. Now, the other thing which I note is really, surely I don't understand what President Museveni thinks. How can you go and appoint judges as acting Acting what? Eh? How do I go? You see, he's testing them. You see how he makes them vulnerable? He makes them vulnerable because like the one who has been reappointed for 1 year to test whether he really makes the decisions which please the government. In case, so she's threatened, she will go and sit in that chair, and anything she thinks will not please Museveni, he will not judge rightly. You see, this is what I see. I hope Ugandans and these judges who are appointed can see that. Because why should you? There is a law. We made a law on how you appoint judges, their terms, and and the way you remove them. It is very, very clear. But now because he knows if he wants to remove judges whom he thinks are not supporting his wrong way of deciding his right, how he wants the cases decided, he will give you acting. And when you are acting, anytime you go. So you are not protected by the laws. So it's really wrong. I don't see why he abuses the authority of judiciary, undermining the third organ of the state. Really, all these things are bad. Don't you see, for instance, what is happening in the Bank of Uganda? Today I've been seeing all those people, financial whatever, looting. How can you have a Bank of Uganda without a governor? Up to now, I think we are going into 4th year. So he undermines and destroys the power and authority of institutions which should be governing our country well. That's what I can say out quickly. Otherwise, I was not ready to comment on these things.
Well, I take the opportunity to congratulate all those who have been
I
appointed.
didn't even congratulate.
I think we have been having a challenge of case backlog, and therefore more judges and more judicial officers should be appointed. So they handle most of the cases which are stuck in the judicial system. And notwithstanding Honorable Matembe's comments, I think it's good to see women and men. I'm sure if all of them were gentlemen, it would be an issue. But the fact that the combination of both genders, it's good. Even looking through it with a political lens, I think there is representation from different parts of the country. I'm sure it would be an issue if all of them were of one ethnic group, for instance. So I think it's good. Well, the issue of acting judges, since the matter is in the court, if the Constitutional Court ruled and then it was appealed, let's wait for the judgment or the ruling of the court. But I'm sure, yes, while an acting judge may appear vulnerable, but the procedures to remove that acting judge still remain the same. You won't just dismiss a judge simply because he or she is acting. You still have to go through that full procedure which is established by the Constitution and by the law. So I congratulate them and wish them their best.
Thank you.
Their positions, yes.
Someone who knows the language very well says Justice Kibedi's second name is Mutangula. In Lusoga, it means don't buy or bribe me.